Hey there, everyone. We've got some great news, and we thought today we would get on here and talk about it. It's our forthcoming book. Hi, I'm Dr. Nancy Hillis.
And I'm Dr. Bruce Sawhill.
And we thought we'd come on here. We usually write a blog post, but we thought instead of a blog post today, we would talk about this whole process of creating a book, in particular, our forthcoming book, which is The Adjacent Possible Guidebook and Stories of Artistic Transformation. And it's our second Adjacent Possible book in the series. Some of you know about the first one, which came out last year, which recently won an award, a Book Excellence Award. And this is The Adjacent Possible, Evolve Your Art from Blank Canvas to Prolific Artist. So we've got this next one coming, and we're really excited about it because this particular book gets further into the concept of the adjacent possible. And the thing that's really fun about this one is that we feature 25 artists who we know in our community and also who are friends. Some of them are friends, some are not in the community. But 25 amazing artists who have vignettes or little stories and lots of photos of their amazing art. And it's really about showing how they access the adjacent possible in their art. And we think you can too. So we'd love for you to be aware of this.
There are so many images in the book that our first version of it was about 600 pages, and we realized it was going to make a pretty good doorstop. But the interesting thing about the creation of this book is that the creation of it itself is a story about the adjacent possible. It's about exploration and adaptation. We didn't have a clear plan as to exactly what the book was going to be about and how it was going to be laid out. And it's sort of the tale grew in the telling.
That's so interesting because it unfolded just like the adjacent possible does in art and creation. And it was surprise after surprise. And we're on here today because the manuscript is finished. But right now, our guide, Dave Provolo, is laying it out in the book. He's the layout designer, and he also laid out the cover for us. And it's quite a process with all these photos to get all that down. So he's working on that right now so that when he's finished with that, he could put the page numbers for the table of contents. So there's such a process, and we thought we'd get it on here and share with you some of the things we've learned in this process of stepping into the unknown, as you said, Bruce, of creating a book.
It's a more complex book than anything we've done before. And also the first Adjacent Possible book was quite theoretical in the sense that it explained how the science of complex adaptive systems had something to tell you about creativity. But we thought, well, examples would be good, actual stories of how this affected people's lives, people's artistic lives. And I thought of a kind of relatable version of a non-scientific explanation of the adjacent possible. Well, we live in Northern California, about a mile from the ocean and about 60 miles south of San Francisco. We love it here. And one of the features or characteristics of summer days is that we very rarely see a sunrise. And that's not just because we sleep in, it's because it's foggy. And the reason it's foggy is that the ocean is quite cold here. It's about 55 to 60 degrees, so about 10 degrees Celsius. And maybe warmer than that, maybe 15 degrees Celsius. And so at night, the land gets colder. And so air from the ocean that's full of moisture comes over the cold land. Cold air doesn't hold as much moisture, so it precipitates, it becomes fog. And then in the morning, when the sun comes out above the fog, it gradually burns it off. Well, there's a sort of pervasiveness of the reality that in the morning, it's gray. It's gray as far as the eye can see. And it seems like that's the world. The whole world is gray. Then all of a sudden you see a line of blue, and a few minutes later, it's just sunny everywhere. And it's almost like the grayness was a dream. And the adjacent possible can be like that there can be a different reality right next door, right adjacent to the one you're in. And it's almost unbelievable till you experience it. And we see that every summer morning.
Right. And this is what we see as artists too, continually in our art. stepping into the unknown, not knowing what's going to happen ahead of time, and then being surprised and actually taking our art somewhere new and taking ourselves somewhere new. And that's what it's about. So that's a big piece of what this book is about. And, you know, in this process of creating this book, again, as Bruce was saying, we didn't know where this was going, but we did know we wanted to feature artists. And so almost 2 years ago, we invited artists in the community and also some friends that I know who are artists to be in this book. And at first, we only had a few people who said yes. And we were surprised by that. And then I started thinking about it, and I thought, you know, the issue might be that some of the artists are feeling a bit intimidated by the idea of writing their vignettes. And so we came up with the idea of having Bruce get on a phone call with the artists. I got on some of those too, and to interview them and to kind of extrapolate their story. And Bruce wrote some of the artists' vignettes and then had them further refine it or give feedback on it. And that way we got a number of amazing artists who might not have been in there otherwise. So that was
right. We had
really
no idea we were going to get 25. First, it looked like 2 or 3.
Right.
We thought, well, there might be a small subset of the book, and the book would mostly be about something else. But it ended up being the central aspect of the book.
That's right. And another unknown was in the beginning, a number of artists asked, do I need to send in photos of my art? And we're like, I don't know. Well, go ahead. Because we didn't know we were going to have photos of their artwork in there at first. So that happened, which made the book larger, right? Because we've got lots of photos in there. It's going to have this square format that we've had in all the books. If you have our books, they're all square formats. You know, the Creativity Reflection Journal, The Artist's Journey, which was the very first one, came out in 2019. They're all, I love this square format. And I think in painting, I also love squares a lot.
And even though it won't be 600 pages, it will be substantially thicker than the previous book because it will have a lot of images in it.
Right, lots of images. And so there was that. I totally could relate to the artist kind of feeling intimidated about writing, because I felt that way as well with the very first book I wrote. I hadn't written in years, and it's kind of scary at first, but eventually it's like painting. The more you do it, or anything, you know, it becomes more second nature eventually. Not that it's easy, but you know, there's that. One of the surprises that happened was what we call the battle of the iPads.
Yes. And there's an adjacent possible moral of the story that here too, is that the iPad is a masterpiece of design. It allows you to do a number of things very easily. And so it's very appealing to people who haven't worked a lot with computers and are maybe intimidated by them. But my late mother really loved her iPad and used it till the age of 100. And she just flourished there. But part of it is that a lot of things are taken care of for you. And this is good and bad. So the economist, I guess I call him a psycho-economist, because there's a movement in economics in the last couple of decades towards incorporating psychology in the understanding of economic decision-making. So Richard Thaler wrote a popular book called Nudge. And Nudge is about defaults. Defaults are setting up systems so that if you do nothing, this is what you get. It's almost like a prefix menu at a restaurant, that unless you take some action, that's what you're going to get. And so with an iPad, there are a bunch of things like that. And it works for most people most of the time. This is the nature of defaults. And people who, it's almost like, it's not, if you have a restaurant and it has a menu, it's not just what's on the menu, it's how it's presented. What's first? You know, what's the first thing under entrees? That's likely to be what's chosen most of the time. Mm-hmm. And so even though the restaurant might offer the same things, how you list the entrees, 1, 2, 3, 4, might change what gets ordered.
Is it kind of like frozen accidents?
Well, it can create frozen accidents. It can create certain behavior that then becomes so pervasive, like the fog here in the mornings, that people don't realize you could do something else. And we realize that with iPads, in order to make it easy to capture and send images around, they had certain defaults, certain settings on the menu for images. And it turned out they were way too small for publishing in a print book. And this caused lots of teeth gnashing.
Consternation.
Consternation.
And we don't use iPads around here, so we didn't know this until we researched it, that this was the dilemma, is that it was set up to send these compressed files through email that were too small.
Too small. And so it really took some doing to get that fixed.
Right.
And that took quite a while to work through, because we had to realize it was a default. And I think the moral of the story there, by the way, Richard Thaler, who wrote this book, got the Nobel Prize for his efforts. So it's very interesting. And it's new style economics. It incorporates the psychology of decision making, not old style economics, which assumes that people are infinitely rational and infinitely informed and do the right thing given the information. People aren't like that at all. It's taken economists a long time to realize. So he got the Nobel Prize for this. And the moral of the story is that there might be a lot of things in your life that are like the defaults on the iPad. You don't even realize they're defaults. Well, I can send emails, I can take pictures. What's your problem?
Right. So anyway, that was a surprise. The other piece that's very interesting is, I call it the big mama of writing books. And that is, the big mama is structure, and the importance of structure, of creating a structure for that book. And I think that's one of the hardest things of all, is how are we going to structure this? What's the flow going to be in the book that makes sense, that unfolds? And so that was a huge piece for us, was laying out the structure. And I have, files and files.
Lots of shuffling went on.
Literally, this is an early one where it says the adjacent possible workbook structure. And it's, section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4, section 5, all these things. Epilogue, all these things, possibilities. So we played with different possibilities, right? And so that was a huge one. And then the other piece that was quite challenging was, once we got the structure of the book, was as we were receiving the stories from artists and the photos, we had to keep that organized, or it was going to be a nightmare.
Yes.
And so I had notes of these sections and who's in there and what their photos are, what the names of their paintings are, the sizes of the paintings. It is like pages and pages of, this is just for the photos of the artist's photos, just pages and pages to keep that. And then here's like another one, the book photos final, after lots of refining, pages and pages of the final. I got emails, from artists. So, it was just amazing getting that structured.
You almost can't imagine, how did books get written before there was word processing software?
Yeah.
What if we're actually typewriting this and having to, juggle all this stuff around? I imagine that editing was perhaps a bigger job 50 years ago, or that books just didn't get edited as much. You sort of got what you got to some degree.
So once we started pulling this together, there was continual editing. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times going through the book, looking for errors, trying to refine it, make it smoother, make it flow, make sure it's durchkomponiert, that is through composed, that it's unified throughout.
We had all these stories, and we wanted to map these stories, pair these stories up with different points we were making about the adjacent possible, which relates to the kind of theoretical underpinnings explicated in the previous book.
Right.
And so it's almost like if as a physicist, if a previous book was a theory book that described, there's these things called Newton's laws. This book relates that to, there's Newton's laws. How do I use that? How do I use knowledge of that to drive a car?
It's really animating it and bringing it into, understanding through stories and through photos of art, of paintings, of how do you really animate these concepts, right?
Right. And how do people experience them? how do we relate people's stories to
Yeah.
the science that we're talking about?
And then another, so that's kind of like developmental editing, like that's that through compose, making sure it all unfolds and makes sense. Then there's kind of like this other kind of editing, which is, I don't know if it's line editing or what, there's different types, copy editing, but basically it's, you know, how you have a title, making sure that all those are the same size, then you've got subtitles the same size, that the typography is through composed and unified throughout the book, and so on and so forth. That piece too, believe it or not, is quite a thing to make sure it's all, you know, unified in that way. So there was that. And of course, our editors and everything help us with that. And then there was the cover. And I know a number of you got involved in the cover contest, which was lots of fun. And essentially the way we worked with the cover is we always put a painting on the cover. And the painting was one of my paintings. And we had 3 different paintings. And I'll show you the paintings that we were looking at. The first was this red painting. Let me put it like this. And we had honed in on an area of it. I think it was kind of in here. Okay, or maybe it was over here. Okay. And then that was one option. And then another option was this green painting. And again, it was a piece of this painting on the cover. I think it was somewhere in here. Okay. Or maybe it's right in here. Okay. And then the third one was a pink painting, which is not here in my studio. It is living in St. Andrews, Scotland, in our daughter's flat right now. So it's not here.
After spending a week at Heathrow Airport, it decided it wanted to stay there for a while.
Yeah, we rolled up paintings and put them in a fishing rod case, brought it with us from San Francisco to Heathrow to Edinburgh, right, to get it to St. Andrews.
Fishing rod cases are very inexpensive and very safe, secure, solid ways to move rolled up paintings around.
So of course we show up in Edinburgh and it's not there. We could have all of our other bags except the fishing rod case with the paintings. And we literally were there, and the day before we left to come back home, they finally found our fishing rod case full of paintings. So that pink painting is in St. Andrews now, along with some others. So anyway, but what happened was, you all voted, and the winner was this one. Okay, the winner was the green cover, and you'll see it, and we'll put it on the blog post. It was sort of close with the pink cover. The red didn't get as many votes, but the pink got quite a bit. Yeah. And so maybe the pink one will be for another book. But the green one won. And so that was lots of fun. That's a whole process of choosing the cover so it really pops and looks different than the other covers that we have. So there was that. Another piece that happened is getting people's bios and photos of themselves for the back of the book of all the artists. So the artists wrote those bios. We helped with a few of them, but mostly the artists wrote those. And another piece that's kind of is going to be interesting in this book is we've got artists who are in the United States and Switzerland and all over the place, but we also have artists who are in, you know, the UK and so on and so forth, and Australia and New Zealand and so on. And, you know, there's kind of like American English and then there's British English. And we decided to keep that in the voice of each artist. So sometimes like a word like color will be spelled differently depending upon if it's an American artist or a British artist, for example.
Or British influence.
Or British influence.
Some Commonwealth.
Commonwealth. And then the other piece was, oh, what are we going to do about, you know, the sizes of these paintings, inches versus centimeters? You know, we're going to go metric. We're going to stay with how we go here. Well, we did go with the inches, and we did keep that uniform throughout. So that was just a sort of bias, I guess, and it's what we're used to here. So that's what we did. So anyway, we've got that. But one of the things that happened in this whole process, and the reason why it took is basically 2 years, his life intervened. And unfortunately, we had massive losses going on in our lives of family, friends, animals over the course of the last 2 years. And so including our own mothers dying and your dad before that. So big losses, but we held on to the dream. And so this is why it's taken so long. I know some of you have heard about this book for a while, but we holding on to this dream. We're not giving up, and we are closer and closer to getting this book out into the world. We may be doing a a pre-sale. We may be doing
advanced ordering.
Pre-orders.
Yeah.
We may be doing that. We'll tell you more as we get closer. We're getting closer and closer, but we're not quite there yet. We are thinking we're going to release the book, publish the book are we thinking the end of August?
End of August.
End of August, maybe early September. So it's coming together, and we're really close. But I think one of the key things we wanted to share with you was, to say yes to your dream and never give up, whether that's being an artist, whether that's writing a book. I know a number of you write books, and to never give up no matter what. And whatever that is for you. Okay. And so we encourage you to say yes to your dreams. Okay. I noticed the internet was a little unstable there for a minute. So we're all about living your most meaningful and alive life, in case I didn't show up on there, and saying yes to your dreams. So we hope this encourages you to do that. And we'd love to hear from you. We're going to put this on our blog at artistjourney.com. On the blog, I think we'll have some images on there too of the book cover and all of that, more details. And we'll tell you more as we keep going. But anyway, I wanted to thank you for being here, and hope you enjoyed this. We just wanted to share this journey with you.
We do feel we're very close to the end of this particular book. Even though there's this saying that in a complex project, the first 90% of the work takes 90% of the time, and the last 10% takes the other 90%.
Yeah, it's like asymptotic, isn't it?
But we're
you get closer, but it's like you're not quite getting there.
Since we've done this before, we know what it feels like to be close.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much. Great to see you all, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to refresh everything. And thanks for being here. Okay. There we go. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.